All right, we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this Lunch and Learn, the Small Business Boot Camp Lunch and Learn. I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services, and we're glad to have you with us today. Hopefully you've got your brown bag with you and you grab a little bit of lunch while we're doing this presentation. For those that are new, or we like to do part of the boot camp series, our Lunch and Learn special sessions and our normal session, but we couldn't do them without all of our community partners. Our community partners help us with their expertise, their time, their effort, and many are businesses, agencies, and et cetera. Today we have our friends and partners at the Department of Revenue with us, so we're excited about that. A little bit about the boot camp and what they are is the Small Business Boot Camp is a webinar series that we host every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. But we also do some special sessions and workshops and lunch and learns such as today. Yesterday, we had a special session on beneficial ownership information. And then on Tuesday, we had our regular session. So this has been a busy week for the boot camp, but we have a lot of great content that we are sharing with our businesses in Arizona, and we're glad you can be with us. One of the great parts of the boot camp is the content library. And because we record all of our sessions, we're recording today's session, and this information will be posted in the content library, so you can go back and review it. If you want to follow up on something, or if you want to share it with somebody, you can share the link and they can view it. There's no cost to access it. It is available for anyone that wants to go to our website and access the previous sessions. So normally in our boot camp, I dive in a little bit deeper, but the ACA has a number of programs that can help support small business. If you have any questions about the ones you see on the screen, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to anybody on my team. We can help answer those questions. However, one program we do want to talk about real quick is the Small Business Checklist. And this is one of our website, and it's on our website. It's a program, an interactive online program that helps entrepreneurs, business owners, and others identify the commonly requested licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal level. We'll have information on tax information, employee information, et cetera, so you can know who you need to contact, what agencies, what organizations to make sure you're doing things the right way and getting started correctly. It's a great resource. So you can scan that QR code. It will take you to the checklist page and also take you to Sally, our virtual assistant, is on that page to help you out as well. So real quick, for all those that are here, some of our upcoming boot camp sessions on Tuesdays are how to implement your growth plan, small business, big impact. And it's an e-commerce focused session on Amazon, focused on Amazon and the Walmart marketplace. And then motivating your prospects to take action. We can do all the marketing we want, but we want to make sure that we take the proper action to close that sale. So we've got some great sessions coming up. We also have another Lunch and Learn on February 1st with the IRS to talk about avoiding the top tax mistakes small businesses make. It's a great session with a great presenter provided to all our small businesses. So we hope you can make that one as well. So with that, I want to jump into today's session. We have Darren Sweet of the Arizona Department of Revenue. We also have some of Darren's counterparts with us online that will help with the Q&A. So Darren's going to be presenting today. He's been with the Department of Revenue for 8 years, and we're excited to have him with us. We also are excited because this is a hot off the press, brand new presentation. It just got approved to share, so we're excited about that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Darren load up his. And while Darren is doing that, I want to remind everybody, please place your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll use the chat for other information, but we want to make sure all the questions are funneled through the Q&A box. It helps us keep track of them, and it helps us make sure we get to the questions. And if we can't get to them in the time that we have, we can contact you afterwards if you want us to through that information. So With that, Darren, it is all yours. And so I'll let you take over.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. Really appreciate that intro. And Faith and everybody here at the Arizona Commerce Authority. So happy to be with you today from the Small Business Boot Camp Lunch and Learn. I have to tell you, when I was working over DES, we did the Lunch and Learn on a constant basis. It was a fantastic program. So I am so happy to be with you here today. Again, my name is Darren Sweet. I do work for the Education Outreach Department here at the Department of Revenue. And I'm very happy to be sharing you our very first common TPT errors class. You all are the first to view this. We just got this approved recently. This is going to become part of our regular rotation of classes that we offer through the Department of Revenue. I'll talk a little bit more about the end of the session, about where you can find those classes, similar to what they have here at the Small Business. You can find a lot of the videos and information. I'm going to show you how to find that at the end of the slideshow presentation. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So right now, it's about 12:06. We're probably not going to go the entire hour. But I do want to let you know that I've got Megan Hawker and Lorelei McClure from the department here with me. They're in the chat and they're also in the question and answer. So if you have a question about something that we're talking about, go ahead and drop that and they will be able to answer that for you. Now, I will tell you, we don't have access to your personal information. So if you're asking something more of a personal nature when it comes to your account, we won't be able to look at that. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to do that, but we would be able to get you some help on the things that we're going to go ahead and talk about today. So like I said, again, I'm very excited to share our very first common TPT errors class. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and go over our agenda and just talk a little bit about what we're going to address today. So here's the biggies. We're going to address some licensing errors, return errors, and within that, filing errors. And then we're going to also address some payment errors. And we're going to be getting a little bit more in depth into each one of these. And I will pause on occasion to see if anybody's got any questions they can drop into the chat. And I don't want to get too many questions there as we're going through there. But again, if you do have a question, just drop it into that. I'm sorry, the Q&A, not the chat. We use the chat when we do our particular presentation, so I'm used to saying that. But how about the question and answer? So this is what we're going to kind of cover. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is some licensing errors. All right, so this is something that when you first start out, one error that can occur is the business not being licensed when there's a statutory requirement to be licensed. Remember, when starting a business, you want to do your due diligence and determine whether or not a TPT or transaction privilege tax license is required. Now, for example, you own property and you rent that property out on a vacation home booking website. Now, statutorily, this is considered a transient lodging at the state and county level, and then that's at the hotel/motel at the local level. Now, each of these short-term rental properties is required to be licensed. And another issue that occurs during the the licensing process is selecting the wrong business codes for the business activity. So once you've determined that you're required to license, please ensure that you're selecting the appropriate business codes on the licensing application. Now, there's several business codes out there. It depends on what you're doing. I like to use retail as an example because that's what a lot of the clients that we deal with are in retail. Our retail business code is 017. So when you go to fill this out, you're going to want to know what your business code is. That can be found we have a business code listed in our tax tables, and that can be found in there if you're looking for that. But I'm using that as an example today. So you want to make sure when you license, you put the correct code on there, because if you put retail and then you're doing something else, it's not going to work with the system. Now, remember, we talked about our TPT license. We have to have those, and they are valid for 1 calendar year. Now, this is going through January through December. So all of our renewals just went out in November, and it was all up to everybody to get them all done in December and then go ahead and get them renewed by the 1st of January. Now, that is regardless of when that license was open. So even if you opened a business like last November, you still have to come in and renew that in the month of January. So as such, each year you should review your license information to ensure everything is up to date. Remove any outdated information, replace it with new information. For instance, Perhaps you provided a power of attorney to a CPA, but this year you're no longer working with that same CPA, so you have moved on. You want to ensure that you revoke that CPA's power of attorney and submit one for anyone that you're working with this year. Maybe some of your corporate officers have changed. So you would want to submit what we call a business account update form, and that's available to you over at azdor.gov. And you want to remove the old corporate officers and add the new ones. Okay, so make sure that if you're working with somebody, you have designated that person as someone to do your TPT or your transaction privilege checks, and they have left, you have to designate a new person by that business account update form to let us know at the Department of Revenue, hey, if they call us to ask information, we need to have them on file as being the person that you have went ahead and said, this is the person I want to work with the Department of Revenue. We need to have that, and that has to be done with the business account update form. Now, the last thing is that maybe you have moved location throughout the year. Let's say that you started in one location and you were in a strip mall and you've been eyeballing a place in a few stores down, and it's bigger. And then finally it came available and you just said, hey, I'm going to move over to that brand new place. Well, your original location on your TPT on your license is going to say 001. But if you went ahead and you move down to the new location, that's going to be 002, right, on your license. But you want to make sure that that old location is closed, because you do not want to get penalized on places that are still left open. So close that old location and make sure your new one is open with your new location address and your new code. So that's just some of the things that we see when we talk about our errors. Okay, so let's talk about some issues regarding paper returns. Now, I'm going to stand on my soapbox just for a moment. A lot of the problems that we see in our department are because of paper returns. All right, now you can go electronic or you can use paper. I will tell you, using our systems at aztaxes.gov is a much, much easier way to work with us here at the department. You still can use paper. It is allowed. We are trying to get out of the paper business, everybody. So I will go over some of these forms, because this is a lot of the stuff that we see on our paper forms that we are getting some issues with. So we want to make sure to let you know that if you are doing it by paper, I really suggest that you do it over there at aztaxes.gov. Get registered with us. You can do all your returns online, and that makes for a much easier way to do it. But let's talk about these forms real quick. First of all, there's a couple of forms that you have to know that we use now as opposed to what we used to use. So here's the deal. We created something called a TPT-EZ and a TPT-2 form for you to use for your taxes. Now, we do have a TPT-1. That is an old form, okay? And I want to go out to this real quick and just show you, if we can, just for a moment. Let's go out. I want to show you how this works. So this is a live look at our Department of Revenue. This is azdor.gov. Now I want to show you this TPT-1 form is for transaction privilege use and severance tax return for filing periods before June 1st, 2016. So if you're going to file, do not file with a TPT-1 unless you are doing an amended return that would be for before June 2016. Now, I also want to show you here on our website, this would be where you find this. Again, this is over at azdor.gov. And so from here, you're going to be able to see this information. You want to read it. This is under our TPT-1. This is our TPT forms. And then over here, you can download, and I'll show you the other forms as well. But I do want to show you that when you download it, it's going to be in a PDF format. Make sure you have PDF Adobe on your system. And there's also instructions for that form as well. So that's the TPT-1 that we do not want to use. So let's not use that form. If you are doing current TPT, we want to address the other forms. So here's what happened. We created the TPT-EZ and the TPT-2. So let's go ahead and run out and take a look at TPT-EZ and show you what this looks like when we go to our website. Okay, so this is the TPT-EZ transaction privilege tax use and severance tax return. Now, I want you to notice something. Every time you go to our website, please ensure that you are reading all the information, because it'll tell you what this is used for. This says this form is for filing periods beginning on or after June 1st of 16. Now, it says a TPT easy can be used by businesses who operate only one physical location. If you have more than one location, you're going to be required to file electronically. Now, again, make sure that you have Adobe Acrobat on your computer, because if you go to download these forms here and you do not, it's going to be a bunch of goobly-goo. So make sure you have Adobe downloaded. So this is where you find this. This is the TPT easy form. And again, you can download the form here, and then they even has the instructions right there as well. So that's where our forms are. Let's just kind of take a look. Let's download this real quick, and let's take a look at what this form looks like so we can kind of get an idea of what we've got going on here. If I can move my little control here out of the way. Here we go. Okay, let's see if I can get this to open up for us. So this is going to be the TPT easy form. Now, as you see, I downloaded that directly from the department. This is what it looks like, and I'm not going to go over all this with you, but you can see right here, you got some taxpayer information. You're going to have some TPT easy is filing for periods beginning or after June 16th. Remember, this is for the current period, anything after June 16th. You've also got all kinds of information like TPTs due the 20th day of the month. So make sure you read all the information. You've got your taxpayer identification, license number, beginning to ending. And then you've got all your information here, like your county, your state excess tax, excess accounting credits. You got all this information. You're going to put all that information in there. You're going to have your name, your taxpayer, or if you're going to have somebody that's prepared it for you, you're going to have that information listed there. Here's all your transaction details pages over here where you put all that information. And here's all that information as well for your city and for your county. So this is all the information that's going that. And then this is super important. We're going to get to this a little bit later. Deduction detail information. You do have deductions you can take in some cases. And if you do have deductions, you want to make sure that you list them on this form. So that's your TPT easy. And that's what it looks like. Okay, so let's go ahead and look over at TPT-2. Now, TPT-2 is a little bit different because if you have more than one location, you're going to be required to use this, and you're going to use the TPT-2. But know that if you also have one more location as well, you are going to be required to file electronically, but not by paper. And it also states here that business with an annual TPT and use tax liability of 500 or more during the prior calendar year are going to be required to file and pay electronically. So what we're telling you is if you have a tax liability that goes over $500, even if you come up to that tax liability at the beginning, at the end of the year, let's say in November, you have $350 in tax liability, but maybe it's October, November, December, you're going to accrue another $150. You want to make sure that you go ahead and remit to a file electronically for your tax liability. All right. And remember, failure to comply with electronic filing and payment requirements may result in those penalties. So same thing, we're going to have to download this information in the Adobe. And let's take a look at this real quick again. I'm going to go ahead and just open up this form so we can see what this looks like. Uh-oh, goodness gracious. It looks like we have a little bit of an error message here we've gotten. Well, didn't expect to see that. That's okay. You can find that TP2. There must be something going on over at the department where they have something must have gone down on there. But that's where you're going to find it, again, over here at your TPT forms. This is located at azdor.gov. And there, again, is the instructions we have along to go with that. So there's where you're going to find those couple of forms at. So, and again, we talked about this. Let me just give you more of an idea. In February of 2016, the department published that new form, that TPT-2. And then in 2019, we posted an easy version of the TPT-EZ. Remember that TPT-1 is only for those filing periods before June of 16. So please only use this form if you are submitting prior to 6/1/16. So again, I'll say it again. If this is going to be something you have to do an amended return, and it's before that date, you might want to use this one. But if you submit the paper form, please submit the TPT-EZ or the TPT-2. So here's the old form. Here's the new forms right here. This is the TPT-2 and the TPT-EZ. And again, I'll say it one more time. Well, you want to note if your annual TPT liability meaning if you owe $500 more in transaction privilege tax, you're going to be statutorily required to file online. So again, to avoiding any of those penalties, and ensuring that the correct form is submitted, it's just a little bit easier to do it over at aztaxes.gov. So I'm going to harp on that the whole time around here. For those of you who are not using our system, I really highly recommend it. Again, we're trying to get out of that paper business, so I would recommend using aztaxes.gov. All right, I'm not sure if you've had any questions. I don't really see the chat where I'm at, so I'm going to pause this for a second in case we've had any questions in there. Oh, I guess I can kind of take a look in here and see if we've got anything right now. I don't see anything in there, but okay, no problem. Let's check the question and answer real quick. Don't see if I've got anything in there right now. Okay, looks like Lorelai's been answering. Thank you all so much for those questions. Appreciate you guys asking those. Okay, so let's go on and talk a little bit about many errors that come along with filing paper forms, even if that correct form's been submitted. So sometimes it's exceedingly difficult to read what is written in those tiny little boxes. If any color ink other than blue or black is used to complete the form, it makes it difficult to read. I'm going to give you an example. I'm not kidding when I say this. When I worked for DES, I would get forms in from the child support division, and they'd be written in crayon. Not kidding. And you talk about hard to read. We would literally get stuff in crayon sometimes, or we get it in yellow ink. You can't read that. That's extremely hard to read. Use blue or black ink. That is what you can read. That's when we make copies of things we can see. So use that. Now, we've had instances where taxpayers have just photocopied old returns and updated the figures. Now, this could cause the return to post to the incorrect tax period if the information at the top of that page isn't updated. So if you're going to submit a paper return, please ensure that you're printing these forms for the website each time they are needed. If you photocopy them and that information at the top's not changed, it might say like, January of 2020. Oh, that's what's going to come across. So that's going to cause an issue as well. Now, another common issue with paper filing returns when a taxpayer attempts to amend their filing. The top of the box of the form must be checked in order for that return to process as amended. So otherwise, it's just going to post to the period as informational, and none of those figures are going to be updated. So make sure that that is checked. If you're going to amend a return, make sure you say it is going to be an amended return. And finally, submitting an incomplete application can cause issues with your account. Now, you want to ensure that all identification information is completed at the top of these forms. This includes the business information. It also is going to include the license number. It's going to include the EIN, or the employment identification, and for the filing period. Now, if any of this information is missing, that return can't be posted. So please ensure to include all pages of the paper return when you are submitting by paper. For instance, the TPT2, the form we just talked about. This form spans multiple pages, okay? And so if any one of these pages is missing when you submit that return, it's going to cause those figures to be inaccurate as information is missing. So make sure if you're submitting returns by paper, take a look at it, make sure that it's entirely filled out, it's legible, and it's completed with that blue or black ink when you send it in. Now, one more thing, for some reasons, another error we see frequently is a duplicate return. Now, this means that the taxpayer has submitted the same return for the same period more than once. Okay, so this increases the length of time it takes to process returns, and it could cause these returns to post to your account incorrectly. So, if you are unsure if your paper return has been posted to your account, you want to go ahead and contact the Customer Care Center, and you can find that number over at aztaxes.gov or azdor.gov. Now remember, if you file online, there is going to be a history of everything that you've submitted using aztaxes.gov. So if you file with us online at aztaxes, you will be able to go back and see the history of what you've done. That's just another reason why you should file online. If you don't, you're going to have to keep track of that. And then if you are asked for an audit, you're going to have to go back and find that paperwork. So again, I'll say it again. If you're going to file TPT with the Arizona Department of Revenue, please follow online over at aztaxes.gov. Okay, I'm just gonna be quiet for a moment. I want to check our Q&A. I want to see if we've got any questions that have come through. Looks like everybody's been busy in here. I appreciate those questions. Looks like Melinda's been asking, and then we have an anonymous attendee asking, and thank you so much, Lorelei and Megan, for answering these questions as we go along. Super important. The questions that you asked today are very valuable to us, and I'm so glad to have Megan and Lorelei being able to answer those as we go today. Okay. Go ahead, Robert.
There's a question in there. It's from Anonymous that Megan answered, but I think I can rephrase it in a general way that might be good for this group. And you maybe touched on it, but it's an example of a business that is buying some items at retail, paying sales tax when they purchase them, and then using those items to create a product. Do they still need to charge the sales tax when they sell that product? Charge the TPT.
Well, let me okay, so we're not really getting into that today, but let me just try to answer that in a short and sweet version of it. We do have something called exemption and resale certificates that are used when you're buying a product that you're going to resell. Well, let me give you a quick example. If you own a barbershop, every time you go to a barbershop or a beauty salon, you're going to see those products at the front of the store, right? And that's shampoo and that's combs and brushes. What they've done is they have bought those products using a resale certificate. They're not going to pay the tax on that then. They're going to pay the tax on that when they actually resell that product to the public. So that's where that would come in. You can find that information over at the Department of Revenue's website when you just go ahead and search exemption certificates, and it's the 5000, Form 5000, and the Form 5000A, which we don't get into today. But I will tell you, we do go over those when we talk through our basic tax workshop. And again, I'm going to share with at the end of the presentation where you can find that information and how you can attend those workshops, just like here, completely for free. As a matter of fact, we did one yesterday, and I swear I saw at least 2 people's name come across that I thought was in the class with us yesterday. So if that was you, welcome back, and I'm glad that you're here in our small business workshop as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss some common errors when we see taxpayers actually file their returns. So you filed your returns, you've done your due diligence, but there could be some problems. First of all, here's one we see a lot. It's when you're filing outside of the assigned filing frequency. When you set up your TPT license, you as a taxpayer, you're going to choose which filing frequency they require based on their estimated annual liability. Now, remember, when we say liability, that's what your tax liability, your gross is going to be whatever you've made. Your tax liability is going to be based on your retail class or your classification was retail, and then where are you at in the state. So that is your liability. What is owed in tax liability to the state? Now, if that liability is less than $2,000 a year, a taxpayer can request to file annually. So if you've got a smaller business and you don't think that you're going to do more than $2,000 in TPT liability, you want to request to file annually. Now, if that liability falls between $2,000 to $8,000 per year, then that taxpayer can file quarterly. And quarterly by I mean like January, February, March, and then what they would do is they would file their returns in April. And then if you are a taxpayer and your liability is more than $8,000, and that taxpayer is required to file monthly. So what happens is, and we've actually had to send letters out to our taxpayers, that issues occur when a taxpayer files outside of their assigned filing frequency. So if you were signed up and you originally had signed up annually once a year, but then you're sending it to us on a monthly basis, it confuses the system because the system knows that you're an annual filer, not a monthly filer. Okay, so please file your TPT according to whatever you have told us at the Department of Revenue. Now, here's the caveat. If an update needs to be made to your filing frequency, here's that business account update form. This is another form that we go way more in depth in our tax workshop classes, but you can find this available for you at azdor.gov. And also a video tutorial is available over at azdor.gov to show you how to complete that form. And we do have lots of videos over there for you. Again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of the class. Now, another common error results from map errors and under reported revenues. Remember, all income received from the customer should be reported and then the appropriate deduction taken. Please do not just don't just report what you believe is taxable income. Remember, since TPT is a gross receipt tax, all income must be reported, and then deductions can be taken as allowed by the statutes or something called the Model City Tax Code. And the Model City Tax Code is basically any city that has additional taxes. So you want to check with whatever city you're in. I will tell you larger cities like Phoenix and Tucson and Flagstaff are all going to have Model City Tax Codes. So make sure you're taking a look at that as well. Now, when it comes to these deductions, each business code has a set of deduction codes that they are applicable. And one of our errors on our return is when that deduction code is used that does not pertain to that specific business classification. So for instance, you're going to use the 549, and that's called a services provided by the retailer deduction code for a business classification that is not retail. Now, this deduction will be disallowed, resulting in a balance due in your account. So you want to ensure that only applicable deductions that are used for your business classification, okay? Make sure that you are doing that. For our paper filers, another issue would arise when it comes to these deduction codes. And one of the reasons why is because you have to go out to azdor.gov and you're going to have to find the deduction code list. And in that deduction code list is the place where you're going to find, and you have to specify if you're doing this by paper, what your deductions are. I will tell you this, if you are filing with us at aztaxes.gov, then only allowable deductions for your classification will show when you're doing it online. For instance, if you're in retail, the only deduction codes you're going to see when you're filing online, when you go through it, are going to be deduction codes that pertain to the retail classification. You're not going to see transient lodging and jet fuel deduction codes in there. But if you're doing by paper, you have to go and you have to look and find the matching deduction codes for what your business is. And it's, for me, it's a little bit harder, right? So we want to make sure that we're working hard, making smarter and not harder, right? But those deductions are accounted in multiple areas for that paper return. So as you see here, you've got a couple of different sections going on, and you've got deduction codes, and they've been kind of highlighted there for you. What you're seeing here is if you do not put on your deduction codes where they go, if not all of these areas are completed, the deduction code is going to be disallowed, resulting in a balance on your account. Okay, so for the TPT-EZ, the all required areas on page 2 of the return. If you will be claiming deductions, you must ensure all appropriate areas are complete. So while we're going through this, while you're doing your forms by paper, make sure that you list all of your deductions for each page. If you miss a page, then we're going to have problems. It's not going to be something that's not going to be completed. So again, when we're talking about our TPT-2, deduction information is included in page 2, 3, 7, and 8 of that return. Now, if any of these pages are missing or they're incomplete, the deductions will be disallowed. Okay, so those are your pages. See where all the deduction codes are going everywhere. If for human error, if you do not list everything on these pages like it's listed all the others, then it's going to be disallowed. All right, so you might miss a deduction code in one of these pages. Make sure that you're doing your due diligence to figure this out. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, everybody, but if you do your taxes online with us at aztaxes.gov, then only allowable deduction codes for your classification, whether you're retail or whatever you are, that's only what you're going to see. So you don't have to figure this out. The system's already figured it out for you. So that's just a little bit more about that paper. Okay, looks like we have a couple of questions here for our Q&A. Just trying to receive what we've seen here. Okay, looks like we've got a couple of questions, but in terms. So Megan,
Hey, Darren, your audio is cutting out, sir. We cannot hear you.
so
Yeah, Darren, we're still not getting you coming through.
Darren, sir, can you hear us?
Oh, we lost Darren.
He got kicked out. No worries. We can pivot here. Let me grab the presentation and I will jump on in.
Hey, and Megan, while you're doing that, if you want to touch on, there's a question that Lorelai's commenting to, but it might be good for other people on here. It says, we just started a business this month. Does a business services consulting firm need to file TPT monthly, quarterly, or annually?
Yeah, that's actually a great
ADOR.
question.
And yeah, I would even ask with that, do they need to even file TPT as a business services consulting firm?
You got it, sir. So a lot of times professional services are exempt from TPT taxation. So if you're a professional service, you may not even have to pay TPT. So if you're not selling anything, if you're not renting anything, if it's something just of a professional intellectual nature, it's not usually subject to taxation. All right, let's see, where was Darren? Here we go. All right. All right, guys, can everyone see the presentation there for me? You could just say something in the chat. Beautiful.
Yeah,
okay, I believe this is where Darren left off. So I was attempting to answer another question. So let me answer that one real quick instead of trying to type out the answer. The question was from Anonymous, and it says, we received 5,000 HC forms from clients, but what code does that equate to? So what I was typing out is the 5,000 HC doesn't necessarily equate to any specific codes. We would need to know more about your business and what you're actually doing in order to tell you how to apply that 5,000 HC. A lot of times that is a exemption certificate. So we need to see what kind of exemption is being claimed and who's claiming it, make sure they're eligible to claim it, make sure that they have their letter from the Department of Revenue saying that they're authorized to use that form. So there's just all kinds of things that go into the 5,000 HC. So if you want to reach out to us, the person with that question, since it was anonymous, if you want to reach out to us directly at educationunit@azdor.gov, we will see if we can help you out a little bit more with those, okay? All right, so let's see here. We're picking up with deduction codes, right? So Darren had mentioned that the TPT-2 is a several page return. So when you're filling out the TPT-2, there are several instances of where you have to enter that deduction information. So you'll see on the pages 2 and 3, it is one column in the middle of that page, and that's where you're going to put specific deduction amounts. When you go down to pages 7 and 8, that's where you're going to list the deduction specific information. So deduction codes, the business codes, the location that those deductions pertain to, the description of the deduction. And if you are missing any of the deduction information from either the columns on 2 or 3 or pages 7 or 8, those deductions are going to be disallowed, and it's going to result in a balance due on your account. So I know that we sound like broken records when we say this, but again, it's really for everybody's benefit. File online at aztaxes.gov. They walk you through the steps. So it's a lot harder to miss the deductions if you're filing online, okay? All right, so the accounting credit is another area where we do get some questions and we have seen some errors. But just to give you a little background, the accounting credit is a credit that's allowed by the state for timely filers. So this is just a state credit. It is not applicable to city taxes. It is just a state credit. So one common issue that we see is that taxpayers do not account, they don't keep track of how much of that accounting credit that they are using. And I apologize if you guys hear background noise. I'm actually at a different seminar right now and they're on lunch, so it's kind of noisy back here. But if taxpayers don't keep track of how much of that accounting credit that they're using, so they continue to apply it to their return, but if they've met that maximum threshold, that accounting credit is going to be disallowed. And again, that's going to result in a balance due on your account. I've actually talked to a couple of people this morning where that was the case. It's $10,000 for paper filers, $12,000 for electronic filers. And again, remember, your returns have to be timely. And you have to keep track of that threshold, that dollar amount that you are using. So those larger businesses, of course, they can claim the credit and they could meet that threshold within 3 months. But for those smaller businesses, you know, you could claim the credit for 11 months and finally just meet that threshold in November. But if you claim it in December and you've met that threshold, it will be disallowed. One other caveat with the accounting credit is that it is per EIN, not per license. So if you have multiple licenses under the same EIN, all of those licenses are going to actually share the same accounting credit amount. So if I have an EIN for my LLC, for instance, and I own several short-term rental properties, but I want them all to be licensed individually, all of my properties are going to share one accounting credit amount. So that's something important to keep note of as well. Finally, amended returns. So I know we touched on this briefly when we were talking about paper returns, but we do also want to mention it here in the filing section because there are some issues with electronically filed amended returns as well. The biggest piece of advice that we can give you is to please remember that amended returns are going to completely replace the original. So when you file an amended return, whether it be online or by paper, please make sure that you're submitting the entire return again, not just the corrections, not just the little things that you needed to fix or add a deduction code when you didn't have it before. You have to completely refile that return, okay? For the paper returns, you're going to click it. No, don't click it. You're going to check that little box right above where your taxpayer information goes. It'll say amended return. You want to make sure you check that box. For online electronic returns, after you select your license number, the period and the year for which you wish to file, 3 little boxes are going to pop up. One of those boxes is going to say amended return. So if you're filing an amended return and you're doing it electronically, make sure as well that you click that box, okay? So next we're going to get into some payment issues, and this is what's going to conclude our presentation today, but this is also what a lot of taxpayers have more stress over, right? You know you filed your return, you know you've made your payments, but for some reason they're just not posting and they're not where they're supposed to be. And then there's penalties and interest, and we need to know what's going on. So let's see if we can cover some of that here. The first thing to remember is that to be considered in compliance with filing and paying requirements, it's actually a 2-step process. So if you're filing online, remember you must first submit your return, and then it's a completely separate process for submitting your payment, and you must do both. So when you're filing online at aztaxes.gov, you will get a confirmation number both for the return filing and for the payment process, okay? So make sure when you're filing online, 2-step process, file the return, then make the payment. If you're submitting paper returns, you're going to complete the paper return, and then you're going to fill out your paper payment, your form of payment, whether it be check, cashier's check, however you're going to send that. Make sure when you're completing the return that on the memo line of that check, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but on the memo line of that check, you're writing where we're supposed to apply that payment. If you don't write it there, we're not going to know where to send that money, okay? And then make sure you're sending your return and your payment in the same envelope. If you're sending them separately for whatever reason and you don't do it appropriately, sometimes those payments can be misapplied. And then lastly, I don't know that any of you guys would do this, but just don't send cash. We have had some instances of when some folks have tried to pay their TPT liability using cash. So do not send us cash, please, please. A large issue that we encounter occurs when payments are sent in, again, with no notification. So if you're going to mail in a paper payment for your TPT liability and you're not sending it with the original paper return, you must include the TPT payment voucher. That's known as the TPT-V. And it's make sure you include it with your payment and that it is sent to the address on the form itself. So when submitting the paper payment, include your license number and the appropriate period on the memo line of that check. So this, along with the voucher, will ensure that the payment is posted to the accurate account and to the accurate period. So to show what I mean here, on the left is the copy of the TPT-V, and on the right is a copy of a check. So looking at the check image on the right, we can see the period and the license to which this payment should be applied. So anytime you're sending a check to the department, make sure you're putting the identification information on that memo line, okay? Then you're going to complete the TPT-V over on the left-hand side, and it's got a mailing address there. So you're going to detach the top portion. Some people call it like a payment coupon. So you're going to detach that top portion, fill it out. You can see on there that it's got a spot for your license number, your name, the amount that you're paying. Put that in the same envelope as your check and then mail that to the department. If you're filing online, but for some reason you want to submit your payment by paper, so you're filing online, but you want to send us a check or a cashier's check or a money order, whatever the case may be, do not send a printed copy of your return along with that payment. That will cause one of the issues that we talked about earlier, which is the duplicate return. If you submitted your return online, but you want to make a paper payment, include the TPT-V with that payment, okay? So do not send a copy of that return. Again, it's going to cause a duplicate payment, which will cause a different issue on your account, all right? Let's see, what's next? So when sending in a payment, we also want to ensure that the payment is only going to cover one period or one license. So one payment cannot cover multiple periods, multiple licenses, or multiple liabilities. There's just no way for that to happen. So for instance, if you're submitting a payment, say for 3 filing periods, but it's all for the same license, you must send in 3 payments. If you have 2 periods for 2 different licenses that must be paid, that's 4 different payments that you're sending in. Do not send one payment to cover multiple things, okay? And then finally, the last thing that we want to talk about is those misapplied payments. So a misapplied payment can occur when the incorrect filing period or license number is written on the memo line of the check, or when you're going online to aztaxes.gov and you're submitting a payment, you select the wrong period to send that payment to, okay? So when submitting a payment, please double and triple check that you're paying what you mean to pay in the correct manner, okay? And that brings us to the end, guys. It's like perfect timing. We've got about 10 minutes left for some Q&As. I know your mind is probably reeling. So if you have questions, let's use the Q&A feature. Drop those in. I am live with you, so I will go ahead and answer them verbally as best as I can. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to share with you guys some resources. This is what we share at the end of every single one of our presentations. We like to share that the department actually has 2 websites. The first website, aztaxes.gov. We say that's the website where you go and do things. So you can enroll to file and pay online. You can verify a TPT license number online. You can check the due dates and all of that fun stuff. Log into your AZ Taxes account. You can do the Arizona tax rate lookup there. The AZDOR.gov, we think of that as our informational website. So if you just need information, go to AZDOR.gov. If you want to file a return or apply for a license, go to aztaxes.gov. My team, the taxpayer education team, has our own page on that website. So if you're looking for any additional classes, any maybe video tutorials or anything like that, please go to our taxpayer education webpage and see what we have to offer for you. There's a question, I accidentally applied for a TPT, but I didn't need it, and now it shows a small fee. So Michaela, go ahead and reach out to us at educationunit@azdor.gov. We'll put you in place, in contact with a license and registration agent and see if we can't get that resolved for you. Okay, so go ahead and reach out to us, educationunit@azdor.gov, and we'll put you in touch with license and registration.
So Megan, I have two questions. To enroll and to file, can you do that through the Business One Stop?
Yep, Business One Stop, yes, sir.
Okay. And then the second one is I saw a good question that got answered in the Q&A, but not with the group, but it might pertain to more than one person. It says my TPT, the TPT that they owe is higher than what their website was charging to their customers. They noticed it and they fixed it on our website. But now what? They still have to pay that TPT out of their own pocket, right?
That is correct, yes. So if they've already filed the return for those periods that were impacted, they are going to need to amend the return to account for that additional sales tax, and then it will have to come out of the vendor's pocket. So that's a great question because it leads into another remarkable segue, is that TPT is a vendor tax. It is a tax on the vendor for doing business in the state of Arizona. So it is not like a common sales tax where a sales tax is charged to the consumer and the consumer is responsible for it. This is a tax on the vendor for engaging in business in Arizona. It's just that the vendor then does have the right and the ability to pass that tax on to the customer. So whether or not a business has passed that tax on to a customer, they are still ultimately responsible for collecting and paying that tax.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then here's just another little thank you from all of us at the Arizona Department of Revenue. If you're interested in any other workshops or you would like to request a speaker for your, we have some tax preparing companies, all that fun stuff. If you have any interest, feel free to reach out to us. Again, that's our website there. And that's all we have for you.
I do want to put the plug in to everybody on here. I've reached out to Megan and her team with many questions for people that have reached out to me, and they are responsive. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to them. They will get back with you or connect you with somebody within the agency that can help. So they're a responsive and great team. So.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we like to say is that, you know, we're not collectors, we're not auditors. So please don't ever feel fearful for contacting us, because we are not the ones who are trying to get some money out of you. We just simply want to help you understand what is required. So never have any hesitation. Reach out to us whenever you guys need anything. And we don't pretend to know all the answers, but we know the people that know the answers. So if we can't answer it for you, we'll definitely put you guys in touch with the right individuals.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Megan. I know we had Darren was able to pop back on through the system, but we don't have any other questions. We will go ahead and wrap up. It's never a problem to give some people back a few minutes back in the day.
Absolutely.
Or have a potty break before you go to the next meeting, or refill your coffee or soda, or take 5 minutes to stuff down lunch before the next item of business for the day. But we want to thank everybody for being here. Darren, I see your hands raised. Do you want to share something?
I did. Hey, everybody, you know what? My own system booted me out. I am so sorry about that. Looks like the Department of Revenue had decided to restart right when I was doing the presentation. I do want to thank so much, Megan, for jumping in and finishing the class. You guys have been awesome today. Again, visit us at that taxpayer education page for all the classes that we do. You all have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy the beautiful weather, and we hope to see you down the road. Thank you so much again to everybody, and especially to Megan for jumping in there and helping out.
We have one last question pop in, and it's actually a really good question. So the person that asked it, thank you.
Yeah, she's in there rapidly typing. We were trying to get it in before we ended the meeting. So I'll just go ahead and say it. The question is, as a new business owner, sometimes it can be a challenge in determining the right time to file taxes as a company. What would be a good time to file taxes if you're starting in the middle of the year? So the first thing is that we need to remember that there are different types of taxes that must be filed, right? So the first one that was our subject today was transaction privilege tax. So when you file your TPT tax is going to be dependent upon the filing frequency that you selected when you applied for that license. So whether you select it annually, quarterly, or monthly, that is when you would be expected to start filing your returns. So if you started in, let's say, May of last year, and you said that you were going to be a monthly filer, we would have expected your first return in June of last year, and then every single month following the reporting period. If you're talking like you're paying yourself from your business, that would be reported on your income taxes. And then there could be, corporate taxes that might have to be paid depending upon how you're set up, and that's a whole completely different topic. But they all have their established due dates regardless of when you started your business.
Yeah, and Megan, with that, if you're not quite sure on that, I would reach out to your tax professional, whoever if you're getting help doing your taxes, because then you also throw in the IRS and their tax schedules, and you might have multiple different times to report stuff, and you want to just get that on a calendar so you don't miss something and get fined for it.
Yep, most definitely.
Excellent. Well, that was a great question to kind of wrap up and take us up real close to time. So again, we want to thank our friends at the Department of Revenue for sharing their lunch period with us and providing this great information. And we want to thank all of you for being here with us today. And we hope to see you on future boot camps. Again, every Tuesday morning, we have our regular series, and we do have some additional sessions coming up, another Lunch and Learn with the IRS on February 1st. Until then, thank you, Megan and Lorelei, for joining us from that other event you're at. So jumping in from the hallway there. And Darren, thank you for presentation and jumping back on when tech wasn't playing nice. And with that, we'll wrap up. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.